Okay, so picture this. You walk into a courtroom, but the very ground you're standing on, it has a legal opinion. Yeah, that's where we're headed today as we dive into the absolutely baffling world of dream jurisdiction. And no, that's not some kind of metaphor. It is, literally, the first and most important rule of the game. We're talking about a place where the law is baked right into the landscape. So you gotta forget everything you think you know about stable ground, because where we're going, well, the rules are just completely different. Think about it. The limestone in one area, the Nightmare Quarter, it literally holds a grudge against you with every step you take. But then you wander over to the wish fulfillment sector, and the moss there practically coaxes you into compliance. This whole thing sets up a legal system where geography isn't just, a place on a map. It's an active, opinionated player in the whole legal drama. So, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this? Well, we're going to do it by looking at a case. A case so completely paradoxical, it seems impossible to even argue, let alone win. Get ready for the case of Elian Castellan. Okay, so our guide through this mess is attorney Mira Voss. She's been doing this for 9 years, so she's seen some weird stuff. And she gets this new case file, right? But it's suspiciously thin. And in dream law, that's a huge red flag. It basically screams that the facts themselves are having a total meltdown. And the charge? Get this. The charge is for committing an act that is at the same time a crime and a legally required service. How is that even possible? All right, here it is. This is the core of the problem. Castellan filed a petition to get rid of a dreamer's protective narrative. Now, you can think of that as a sort of recurring dream, like psychic armor they put on every night. Okay, simple enough. But here's the twist. In the Nightmare Quarter, where Castellan started this process, that petition is considered an unlicensed weapon. It's illegal. But in the wish fulfillment sector, where the action was finished, it's called a liberation service. It's not just legal, it's a good thing. So the exact same act gets two totally opposite legal labels, all depending on where you're standing. So you're probably asking, how can one thing be both a crime and a service? Well, it all comes down to the very specific, very strange in-between place where Castellan chose to walk. A place where the law, it just seems to disappear. This place has a name, the liminal strip. It's basically a jurisdictional no man's land. You've got the super harsh laws of the Nightmare Quarter on one side, and the optimistic, happy laws of wish fulfillment on the other. And in this strip, they overlap. And what happens when they overlap? Well, they pretty much cancel each other out. It's like a legal dead zone. And that is exactly where Castellan went. And here's the kicker. This was no accident. Castellan tells Mira straight up that this whole thing wasn't just about the act itself. It was an experiment, a deliberate test. They wanted to know if this legal gap was just some loophole, an oopsie by the mapmakers, or if it was a fundamental feature of how dream law was designed. So really, Castellan isn't the one on trial here. The law itself is. So as Mira starts digging, the case just blows up. It goes from a weird legal puzzle to a full-blown historical conspiracy. Because she finds out this gap, this liminal strip, it wasn't an accident. It was put there on purpose. It was a deliberate erasure. She heads to the archives, and this is where it gets really good. She pulls out these ancient maps and finds evidence of a whole lost jurisdiction. Turns out, the liminal strip wasn't always a gap. It used to be a real place, a governed place, called the Medial Territory. And get this nickname, the territory of both laws. It was a place built from the ground up to handle exactly these kinds of contradictions. And when you look at the timeline, the scale of this cover-up is just wow. For 37 years, this medial territory was working fine. It had a stable government. It was setting precedents. But then, about 300 years back, this little piece of paperwork, Amendment 7C, just poof, wipes it right off the map. They replaced a perfectly good legal system with nothing, a void. So you have to ask, why? Why erase it? And a little note tucked away in the archives gives this really chilling answer. It wasn't shut down because it was failing. Oh no. It was shut down because it was working too well. Its whole thing was handling complexity, and that was a direct threat to the power of the simpler, more black and white places like the Nightmare Quarter. Okay, so we've been talking about all this abstract legal history, right? Maps, amendments, conspiracies. But what about the actual person at the center of all this? the person whose mind was the actual crime scene. Let's talk about the dreamer, Sable Oren. So, every single night, Sable Oren was stuck in the same exact dream. They were in court, successfully defending themselves against this deep feeling of inadequacy. On one hand, this dream was their psychic armor, right? It protected them. But on the other, it was this crushing burden. Imagine spending all your waking hours trying to prove something you'd already won in your sleep. It's exhausting. And just listen to how Oren puts it. They say it was a single act that was, at the same time, a violation and a liberation. The harm and the help weren't two separate things. They were the same event. And that right there is the exact kind of messy human complexity that the Medial Territory was designed to handle. So this brings us to the endgame. Mira's whole strategy flips. This case isn't about defending Elian Castellan anymore. No. Now it's about putting the entire legal system on trial for what it deliberately chose to forget. Mira's investigation drags this one critical question kicking and screaming into the courtroom. Was this legal blind spot just a mistake, a simple oversight by the folks who drew the first maps, or was it a deliberate feature carved right into the law to serve some kind of hidden political agenda? And then, in a restricted archive, she finds it, the smoking gun. Records from the very last judge of the Medial Territory. And they prove, without a doubt, that the whole dissolution was just an illegal power grab by the Nightmare Quarter. So the gap? It's not a hole in the map. It's the ghost of a territory that was deliberately murdered. And that's when you see the true purpose of this whole trial. It's not just about getting Castellan off the hook. The trial itself is a tool, a crowbar, designed to pry open the past and force the entire legal system to look at the messy, inconvenient history it tried so hard to bury. It's an argument for everything the law chose to forget. And that leaves us with a final thought, one that really echoes way beyond the stream world. What happens when any system, whether it's legal, social, or even just our own personal rules, chooses a nice, clean, simple answer over the messy, contradictory truth of how things really are? Who are the people that get lost in those gaps? Who gets left behind, unheard and unseen, in the spaces we refuse to map?